Have you ever noticed that the biggest battles in your life haven't happened at work, in your relationship, or even with monthly bills? Let me ask you a quick question. How many times in the last week have you wanted to do something you knew was good for you, but something inside said no? Tiredness, fear, laziness. That voice that says, "I'll start tomorrow," or "It's not the right time," or "This won't work anyway." You weren't lacking willpower. You were being ruled by a mind out of control, and the numbers confirm what your intuition already knows. A study of over 2,000 adults found that people spend nearly 47% of their waking time thinking about something other than what they are doing. For almost half the day, the mind is wandering, revisiting the past, anticipating catastrophes, judging, criticizing, comparing. And the more the mind wanders, the more unhappiness the person reports. Not the other way around. An uncontrolled mind is not a consequence of a difficult life. It is the cause. But here's what's even more disturbing. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute studied what happens in the brain when we try to suppress an unwanted thought. Do you know what happens? The thought becomes stronger. This is what scientists call the rebound effect. The more you try not to think about something, the more you think about it. In other words, your strategy of controlling your mind by fighting against your thoughts is making the problem worse. This just proves that most battles happen inside your own head. And when you can't control your own mind, you're already certain of defeat, even before the battle begins. Gordon was 40 years old, had a decent job, a family he loved, and a brain that wouldn't stop working against him. Gordon's problem was that his mind was in control of the situation, and Gordon wasn't. And if no one has told you yet, I'll tell you now. A mind you don't control isn't just an inconvenience. It's the reason why everything you want most in life keeps slipping through your fingers. The Japanese have known this for over 1,000 years. And that's exactly what a karate master named Sensei Hiroshi taught Gordon Reed, an ordinary man from Cleveland, Ohio, who spent 4 decades being defeated not by life, but by his own mind. Through this man's story, we will understand why our mind is our worst enemy and how we can win the battle against it. But before I tell you Gordon's story, and before I show you exactly what Sensei Hiroshi taught him, I need to make a quick request. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, click the subscribe button. It's free, and it guarantees you'll continue receiving content like this, which combines Japanese philosophy with what modern science knows about the human mind and behavior. Also, leave a like on the video. This really helps the channel grow and brings this type of content to more people who need it. Tell me in the comments, what's the thought that most often takes over your mind when you don't want it to? That thing that keeps coming back uninvited. I read the comments, and your answer might help other people who are going through the same thing. Now, back to the video. Chapter 1. The Man Who Lost to Himself. Gordon wasn't the kind of man you'd see on the street and think, that guy's suffering. He was 40 years old. He worked as a project supervisor at a construction company. He paid the bills. He had a tidy apartment. He woke up early. He wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't use drugs. He didn't have any problems that the world could see. His problem was internal. Gordon's mind was like a television that no one turned off. Even when he tried to sleep, it was still there. The boss who had said something irritating in the meeting, the bill that was due next week, that conversation from 3 years ago that he had answered incorrectly and kept replaying. His mind churned up the past like someone picking at an open wound. And in the morning it was worse. He would wake up already tired, as if his mind hadn't rested, as if he had worked all night without stopping. Gordon tried to solve the problem in several ways. He tried meditation. It lasted 2 days before he threw it away because he couldn't stop thinking. He tried a mindfulness app, opened it 4 times, uninstalled it. He tried reading self-help books. He got to the 3rd chapter with his mind elsewhere and need to reread the same paragraph 6 times. The problem was that Gordon believed that controlling the mind was the same as silencing it, that a controlled mind was a quiet mind, and every time the mind screamed and he couldn't silence it, he saw himself as a failure, and failure became his identity. This is who I am, this is how my mind is, there's no way around it. This lasted 40 years. until one Thursday evening when he was walking back home and passed by a dojo. The sign on the door read, "Shotokan Karate, all ages, beginners welcome." Gordon wasn't looking for karate. He was looking for anything. He went in without thinking much, just to see. The dojo was simple. White walls, tatami mats on the floor, a few framed diplomas, and in the back a man of about 65 guiding a group of students. The man was compact, with grey hair. He seemed to exist at a different pace than the rest of the world. Gordon stood in the doorway watching for a few minutes. It wasn't the karate that captivated him, it was the silence. Not the silence of sound. There were shouts of kiai, the stamping of feet on the mat, heavy breathing. But there was a quality of attention there that he had never seen before. Every person in the dojo was completely present in what they were doing. No eyes wandering, no minds elsewhere. Or at least that's what it seemed like. The man in the back finished his instruction, turned around and saw Gordon in the doorway. "Do you want to go inside, or would you prefer to watch from the outside?" The voice was calm, without judgment. "I don't know if it's for me," Gordon said. "I'm 40 years old. I've never done anything like this before." The man made a simple gesture with his hand. "So you're exactly where you should be." That night, Gordon Reed met Sensei Hiroshi Tanaka. Chapter 2. The First Lesson. In the first lesson, Gordon learned one basic posture. Just one. He spent 45 minutes repeating the same movement, his feet, his hips, the position of his arms. It was simple and frustrating at the same time, because Gordon's mind couldn't stay focused on the movement. It kept wandering. Am I doing this right? Are people looking at me? Will my knee hold up? I look like an idiot. At the end of class, as the others were leaving, Gordon went to Sensei Hiroshi. "Sensei, I have a question." "House." While I was trying to do the pose, my mind kept wandering. I kept thinking about other things. Is that normal? Sensei Hiroshi looked at him for a moment, with genuine attention. "Not only is it normal," he said, "it was the most important part of what you did today." Gordon frowned. "I don't understand." "Did you notice that your mind wandered?" "Yes, but my mind didn't stop wandering. I kept going back." "Exactly." Hiroshi crossed his arms calmly. "You noticed, and you came back. You noticed and you came back. There's nothing wrong with that. That's training. The footwork was just a pretext. The real training was this, noticing when the mind wanders and bringing it back. That has a name, a very old one," as Gordon waited. "Mushin," Sensei said. "Mind without mind. It doesn't mean an empty mind. It means a mind that isn't trapped, that doesn't cling to thoughts, that lets them pass. And you practiced that today, even without knowing it." Gordon went home that night with a strange feeling. It was as if someone had given a name to something he had always felt, but had never been able to name. He couldn't stop thinking about what Sensei had said. Notice and return. Notice and return. Could that be it? Could controlling the mind not be about silencing it, but simply about perceiving it? He came back the following week, and the next, and the next. Karate classes were physically demanding, and for Gordon, who hadn't practiced anything in years, the first few months were difficult. His knees ached, his shoulders were stiff, he would come home exhausted. But something was happening that went beyond the physical. Each time the sensei instructed him to repeat a technique 100 times, Gordon realized that his mind had two choices: resist the repetition with boredom and frustration, or simply be there, present, in the technique, in that specific technique, not in the 99 that were still to come. And when he managed to be there, just there, something strange happened. Time changed in quality. The intrusive thoughts still appeared, but they lost their intensity. It was as if the physical repetition created a space between him and the thoughts. He began to understand that the dojo wasn't a place to learn self-defense. It was a laboratory for learning to inhabit his own mind. Chapter 3. The Conversation That Changed Everything. After 3 months of classes, Gordon arrived at the dojo on a Wednesday with his mind particularly noisy. He'd had an argument with his boss. A project was behind schedule. He was tense, reactive, and his head was working in a state of silent alarm. The class was awful. He messed up simple sequences. He lost his balance in positions he had already mastered. His body was there, but his mind was at the construction site. Finally, when the dojo emptied, he remained seated on the tatami mat. Hiroshi came and sat beside him. "Today was difficult," the sensei said. "Yes, a lot happened at work." "Yes, I noticed." A pause. "Can I ask you something, Gordon?" "Of course." "What happened at work? Is it still happening now?" Gordon thought. "No, it's over. The meeting was this morning." "Then why are you here?" Gordon remained silent. "The situation is over," Hiroshi continued, "but your mind brought that situation here, inside the dojo, inside your body. Do you know what the Japanese call a mind that can't stay in the present?" "No." "Saru no Kokoro, the monkey's mind." The sensei gestured with his hands, imitating a monkey jumping from branch to branch. The monkey never stays in one place. It jumps, 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 from the past to the future, from what happened to what might happen, and it is never truly where the body is. Gordon recognized it with a painful precision. His mind was the monkey. It always had been. "How do you stop the monkey?" Hiroshi smiled slightly. "You don't stop, you don't argue with the monkey. If you argue, he gets more agitated. Have you ever tried forcing your head to stop thinking?" "I tried. It doesn't work." "It doesn't work because you're using the mind to control the mind. It's like trying to put out fire with fire." The sensei slowly stood up and went to the window. What works is giving the monkey something to hold on to, something concrete, in the present moment. Movement, breathing, posture. These are anchors. The monkey grabs onto the anchor and, for a moment, stops jumping. Here I want to digress because perhaps you recognize this pattern in your own life. Maybe your mind is like a monkey, jumping from branch to branch, and every time you try to silence it, it gets more agitated. Maybe you can't stay in the present because your mind is always jumping between dwelling on the past and fearing the future. This pattern isn't broken simply by forcing yourself not to think. You need to create anchors so that your mind stops wandering between thoughts and clings to them. It could be controlled breathing. It could be something physical that you pick up to feel the texture. Let's delve deeper into this. Gordon returned home that night and stood in the kitchen for a long time. Anchors. He began to pay attention, to notice, without judgment, when his mind wandered from the present. And he realized that the frequency was absurd. His mind wandered while he was washing the dishes. It wandered while he was showering. It wandered while he was driving to work. And that was the scariest part, because his body was driving on autopilot while his mind was somewhere else entirely. He was living a life in arrears, always processing what had already happened or anticipating what hadn't happened yet, rarely present in what was happening now. And for the first time in his life, he was able to see it clearly, not to blame himself, but to understand. In the following weeks, he began to apply what he learned in the dojo outside of it. When washing dishes, he paid attention to the water temperature, the texture of the plate, the sound of the tap. When his mind wandered, and it did, he noticed, and then it returned. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't illuminating. It was laborious and simple at the same time. But something was changing, very slowly, like water shaping stone. Chapter 4. Fudoshin, the mind that does not fall. 2 months later, Gordon arrived at the dojo on a Saturday afternoon and found the sensei alone, practicing kata, sequences of movements against an imaginary opponent. Gordon watched. There was something hypnotic about the sensei. The movements flowed without hesitation. There was no unnecessary force. There was no rush. Each gesture arrived at the exact moment and was followed by the next without tension between them. But what impressed Gordon most wasn't the technique. It was the expression, or rather the absence of expression. It wasn't indifference. It was something deeper, as if nothing could move that man from where he was. When Hiroshi finished, Gordon asked, "How can you be like this? Nothing affects you." The sensei shook his head. "Everything affects me, I just don't identify with the effect." Gordon processed that. "I don't understand." "Fudōshin," the sensei said. The unwavering mind, the mind that feels and is not swayed. He went to a chair and sat down. Gordon, tell me something. When you get angry, what happens? I get irritated. I say things I shouldn't, and I keep thinking about it for hours afterward. Because you identify with anger. You don't have anger. U-turns anger. You dissolve into it. And when you are anger, you no longer control anything. Anger decides for you. Gordon nodded slowly. He recognized that. He had spent his life like that. Fudōshin is not about suppressing anger, Hiroshi continued. It's about observing it, like you observe a cloud passing in the sky. The cloud is there. You are aware of it. But you are not the cloud, and the sky doesn't change because the cloud passes. Gordon pondered this for days. He is not anger. He is not anxiety. He is not thought. They are states. They are clouds. They pass. But there were 40 years of habit in the way. Like Gordon, you are not your feelings or your current emotional state. Feelings and emotions are fleeting things. A single moment doesn't define who you are. The following week, an incident occurred at work. A colleague, Ryan from the purchasing department, sent an email criticizing Gordon's work, copying the entire team. Public, unnecessarily hostile. Gordon felt the heat rising. The aggressive response was already formulated in his head, fingers on the keyboard, and then, for some reason he couldn't explain at the time, he stopped. He noticed the warmth in his chest. He noticed the tension in his shoulders. He noticed the thoughts shooting off like sparks, and instead of engaging with them, he stood there for a moment, just observing, just like Hiroshi had described. The cloud was there. He could see the cloud, but it wasn't the cloud. He shut down his computer. He went out to get some water. He came back 15 minutes later and wrote a concise, non-aggressive response that solved the problem without creating another one. It was a small thing, but for Gordon, it was like moving a mountain. For the first time in 40 years, he had chosen the answer. His mind had suggested one. He had evaluated it and chosen differently. That was the difference between a mind that governs and a mind that serves. Chapter 5. The night Gordon almost gave up. Every real process has a dark night. Gordon's arrived in the 4th month. It was December. Work was heavy. End of the year, deadlines, pressure. Karate classes were demanding more. The sensei had introduced new techniques and Gordon felt he was regressing. Things you thought you knew you didn't know anymore. New things I couldn't absorb. He arrived home after a terrible Thursday and sat on the sofa unable to do anything. His mind was everywhere. At work, at the dojo. On the time he was wasting going there every week. On the fact that he was 40 years old and still hadn't managed to control himself. On the memory of old conversations he shouldn't be revisiting. The monkey was completely loose. He picked up his phone and started typing a message to Hiroshi saying he was going to pause classes, that he was too busy, that he would come back when things calmed down. He wrote the message. He read it once, and he didn't send it. He didn't send it because of a thought that came to him almost involuntarily. When things calm down, I say I need to wait longer. This isn't a pause. This is giving up, the way I've always given up. He stared at the message for a long time, and then it went dark. The next morning, he went to the dojo, too. When he arrived, Hiroshi greeted him as always, no drama. "Good morning, Gordon." But before class began, Gordon said, "I almost didn't come." The sensei nodded. "I know how it is." Gordon looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because every student has that night. The night when everything seems too heavy, and the easy way out seems reasonable." Hiroshi went to the window. "Gordon, tell me something. When you were about to send that message last night..." Gordon's mouth dropped open in surprise. "We don't need to go into details," Sensei continued calmly, "but there was a part of you that chose not to send. Do you know where that part came from?" Gordon thought. "I recognized the pattern. I saw that I was repeating what I always do." "This has a name." The sensei turned. "Jiko Seigyo, self-control. It's not about suppressing the impulse. It's about observing it clearly enough so that you can choose. You observed. and you chose differently. A pause. That's exactly what we're training here. Karate is just the pretext. Chapter 6. What the sensei never revealed in class. There were conversations that didn't happen on the mat. After a few months, Hiroshi and Gordon developed the habit of having tea together in the small back room of the dojo after school. It was there that the deepest conversations took place. One night, Hiroshi asked, "Gordon, what do you think is the opposite of self-control? Impulsiveness? Lack of discipline?" Sensei shook his head. Reactivity. The opposite of self-control is living in permanent reaction. The environment says something, you react. The mind suggests something, you obey. A hostile email arrives, you respond with hostility. A bad thought appears, you believe it without questioning. Hiroshi raised his cup. The reactive person has no life. They have a series of reactions. Other people, other events, other thoughts. These are the authors of their story. You are just the character who responds. Gordon was silent for a while, then he said, "That's been my whole life." Yes, and that's the life of most people, not because they are weak, but because no one taught them that there is another way. And what is the other way? Space. Hiroshi placed the cup on the table. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space lies your freedom. Training the mind, whether through karate, Zen meditation, or martial arts, is training to expand that space, so that automatic reaction is not the only option. There was something about that concept that Gordon felt was like a door opening, the space. He began to look for space in everyday situations. When the traffic was bad and he felt his impatience rising, space. When the boss made a decision he disagreed with, space. When his mind began its nightly rumination on what had gone wrong during the day, space. Many times he would react before realizing he had reacted, but each time he did realize it, even later in retrospect, it was a muscle being exercised. And muscles grow with use. Hiroshi once said something that Gordon wrote in a notebook and kept on his desk. The untrained mind is an instrument that plays the music of others. The trained mind is an instrument that you learn to play. Gordon was learning to play. But there was still one piece missing, the most important one of all, and the sensei would only reveal it when he realized that Gordon was ready. Chapter 7. Mushin, the flowing mind. It was a Saturday morning in March. The dojo was almost empty, just Gordon and two other more experienced students. The sensei was guiding them through a simulated combat exercise, not to hurt them, but to practice presence under pressure. Gordon was nervous. He knew there were better people in the group. His mind immediately went, "I'm going to mess up, I'm going to look like an idiot. My left foot needs to be further forward." And then the exercise began. Something happened that Gordon wouldn't be able to explain later. His mind stopped commenting. It didn't become quiet, but it stopped commenting. He was moving, responding, adjusting, but there was no inner voice evaluating each gesture. There was only movement, space the next moment. It lasted about 2 minutes. When he finished, Gordon stood there for a moment, a little disoriented. Hiroshi was looking at him. "You felt it," the sensei said. "What was that?" Mushin. A pause. Its absence of attachment to thought. The mind was active, receiving information, processing, responding, but it wasn't judging or anticipating. It was present, completely present. Hiroshi approached. "Do you know why it happened now and not before?" "No. Because you stopped trying to control. You finally trusted what you trained. Real control isn't about squeezing, it's about letting go at the right moment." Gordon sat on the mat for a long time after the others left. He was replaying those 2 minutes in his head, trying to understand what had been different, and he realized, at that moment, he wasn't trying to be better than he was. He wasn't comparing the present with the past or the future. He wasn't managing the impression he was making. He was simply there. It was the simplest thing in the world, and it had taken 40 years to get there. Hiroshi brought 2 cups of tea and sat down beside them. "Mushin is not a permanent state," the sensei said. "Great masters spend decades striving to extend the time they can maintain it. Don't be fooled into thinking you've reached your destination. I didn't find it. But you proved it's possible, and that changes everything. Hiroshi warmed his hands in the cup. Do you know why a mind in the Mushin state performs better than a mind that is trying? Because the trying mind divides its attention between the task and the evaluation of the task. It does it and at the same time observes whether it is doing it well. It's like trying to walk while analyzing every movement of your legs. The analysis interferes with the walking. Gordon reflected on his work projects, on how he always went into meetings already prepared to be criticized, how this divided attention created unnecessary tension and reduced the quality of his presentations. This happens to me at work all the time. It happens to everyone. Most people only experience a state of Mushin when they are completely absorbed by something they love. Children have it naturally. Adults lose it. A pause. Training is about recovering. What Gordon was experiencing wasn't mysticism, it was neuroscience. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio from the University of Southern California has spent decades studying the relationship between emotion and decision-making. One of his most revolutionary discoveries: emotions do not interfere with reason. In the absence of emotional regulation, decision-making worsens dramatically. People who have lost the ability to feel emotions due to specific brain injuries have become incapable of making functional decisions. A mind that does not relate well to its own emotional states is operating with a fundamentally compromised system. A study conducted by psychologist Roy Baumeister of the University of Florida identified what he called ego depletion. Willpower, according to him, functions like a muscle and is depleted with use throughout the day. But there is a crucial difference between using willpower to suppress internal states and using trained attention to observe them. The latter consumes far less energy. The former, according to the data, eventually always fails. A study by Richard Davidson's team at the University of Wisconsin, which followed meditation practitioners over time, found structural changes in the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain associated with self-control, planning, and decision-making. The brain is not fixed, it responds to training. Attention training produces measurable physical changes. The Japanese knew nothing about neuroplasticity, but they knew about results, and they developed practical systems, karate, Zen, Budo, that produced those results centuries ago, long before instruments existed to measure what was happening in the brain. What they called Mushin, science calls the flow state. What they called Fudōshin, science calls emotional regulation. What they called Jiko Seigyo, science calls executive control. The names are different. The phenomenon is the same. Chapter 8. The Turning Point. 10 months after joining the dojo, Gordon took his first graduation exam. It was a simple event. No outside audience, just the dojo students and the sensei. But for Gordon, it carried a weight that went far beyond the colored belt. It was proof that he had made it this far, that he hadn't given up the night he almost sent the message, that he had come back after the bad sessions, that he had endured the months when it seemed like he wasn't making any progress. The exam involved performing kata sequences alone, demonstrating basic techniques, and going through a brief simulated combat. When his turn came, Gordon breathed. He noticed the nervousness. The cloud was there, but it wasn't him. It was just a cloud. And it began. There were mistakes. On 2 occasions, the technique came out differently than he had practiced, but he didn't stop to discuss it internally. He noticed. He continued. His mind remained, for the most part, where his body was. When he finished, Hiroshi silently assessed him for a few seconds. Then he gave a nod that Gordon had never seen the sensei give to anyone. A slight tilt of the head. Discreet. Respectful. The following week, Gordon arrived at the dojo with a briefcase. I had printed out the quarterly performance data from the construction company, the team evaluations, the project results. And there was a clear change, not dramatic, but measurable. Less rework, fewer conflicts, faster and more effective decisions. I wanted to show you this, Gordon said to Sensei. Hiroshi glanced at the papers briefly. What has changed in your assessment? Space. I pause before reacting. Not always, but much more than before. And when I pause, the decision I make is almost always better. Anything else? Gordon thought. My mind doesn't drain as much. Before, I'd come home exhausted even on days when I hadn't done anything physical. Now I understand why. I was spending energy fighting my own thoughts, resisting. Now, not so much. Hiroshi clasped his hands together. You've discovered something the Japanese have known since the dawn of Budo. A mind at war with itself is the most exhausted mind there is. Not from work, but from internal conflict. And internal conflict consumes more energy than any external task. Why doesn't anyone teach this? Some people teach. A pause. But it's difficult to sell. It takes time. It requires the person to show up when they don't want to. It requires them to endure discomfort without running away. The world prefers to sell the quick fix. The 10-month path doesn't appear in advertisements. But here's what Gordon discovered in his second year, and which Sensei Hiroshi himself only revealed after realizing the student was ready to hear it. Mastering the mind is not the destination, it's the means of transportation. Because when you stop wasting energy resisting your own thoughts, when you stop being swept away by every passing emotion, when you learn to choose your response instead of being governed by reaction, you free up a quantity of cognitive and emotional energy that was previously completely consumed by internal chaos. And this energy needs to go somewhere. Gordon guided his toward the right career path, and he was promoted within 18 months for the first time in 7 years. Not because he worked longer hours, because he made clearer decisions and led the team without the burden of constant reactivity. But what no one expected, not even he himself, was the effect on relationships. There was a colleague at work, Thomas, with whom Gordon had a silent friction that had existed for years. There was never an open conflict, but the tension was palpable. Awkward meetings, communication always a little defensive on both sides. 6 months after the change began, Thomas stopped Gordon in the hallway and said, "I don't know what changed about you, but you've become easier to work with. Seriously." Gordon didn't say anything about the dojo. He just expressed his gratitude. But he understood what had happened. A reactive mind projects reactivity. The people around you feel the tension and respond with tension. When you stop being a source of reactivity, the environment around you begins to change, not because people have changed, but because you have stopped activating the worst in them. The mind is contagious, in both senses. Chapter 9. What Hiroshi never told the students. It was the last tea session of a year that had been intense for Gordon. Hiroshi was quieter than usual. There was something different in the room. "Sensei," Gordon said, "may I ask you a personal question?" "He can." "Have you always been like this? This calmness, this presence? Have you always had this?" Hiroshi was silent for a moment. Then he said, "No." And for the first time, he told his story. He had arrived in the United States at the age of 28, fleeing a failed business in Japan and a crumbling marriage. He spoke English with difficulty. He knew no one. In 1 year, he had lost everything he had built. "My mind back then," Hiroshi said, "was the noisiest place you can imagine. Shame, fear, anger, thoughts that wouldn't stop. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't be anywhere without carrying the weight of everything I had lost." Gordon looked at him in silence. "I came to the dojo out of desperation, not for philosophy." The sensei raised his cup. "The first master I met here told me something that I pass on to all my students, but that most don't understand at first. He said, an uncontrolled mind is not your enemy. It's a child who has never been taught how to behave. You don't yell at the child. You teach them patiently, every day." A long pause. "It took me 15 years to truly understand this, not just in my head, truly in my body, in my reactions, in my life." Hiroshi placed the cup on the table. "Gordon, you've been here for a year. You're only just beginning, but what you've done in this year, showing up when you didn't want to, coming back after difficult nights, observing without judgment, is the beginning of the only path that works." Gordon left the dojo that night with a feeling that took him a few days to name. It was the feeling that he was on the right track, because he had stopped running away. For 40 years, the unconscious strategy had been to avoid internal discomfort, distraction, resistance, escape to the cell phone screen, to the series, to excessive work, anything that didn't require engaging with one's own mind. Now he stayed, Not with pleasure, not always easily, but he stayed, and he discovered that what he expected on the other side of the resistance was not the monster his mind promised. It was only silence. And in the silence, there was clarity. And in the clarity, there was choice. The sensei had given him something that no self-help book, no productivity app, no online course had ever been able to provide. Not a technique, a practice. The difference is enormous. With a technique you apply and wait for the result. With a practice you inhabit and it transforms you as you inhabit it. Let me recap what Gordon's story and the philosophy that Sensei Hiroshi carried for decades teaches us. First point, an out-of-control mind is not a character flaw. It's a mind that has never been trained. Saru no Kokoro. The monkey mind is the default state of any untrained mind. It's not weakness, it's a lack of practice. Second point, the path is not to fight against the mind, it is to observe it. Mushin, it's not forced silence. It's the ability to let thoughts pass without being swept away by them, to notice them and return to them, to notice them and return to them. Simple and tirelessly repeated, this changes the brain. Third point, Fudoshin, an unwavering mind, does not belong to people who do not feel. It belongs to people who feel and do not dissolve into what they feel. The cloud passes, the sky remains. Fourth point, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Expanding that space is a lifetime's work. But every time you choose the response instead of obeying the reaction, the space gets a little bigger. Fifth point, a mind at war with itself is the most exhausted mind there is. When you stop fighting your own thoughts, you release energy that was previously being consumed by internal conflict. And this energy changes everything. Work, relationships, the quality of decisions. Gordon didn't become a different person. He finally became himself, without the noise that prevented him from hearing who he was. And you? How many years have you been living in a state of reactivity? How many decisions were made not by you but by your emotional state at the moment? How many mornings started already heavy because your mind never truly rested? You don't need to answer now, you just need to notice, because noticing is the beginning of everything. The monkey's mind doesn't stop jumping because you want it to. It stops jumping because you stop following it. And that alone, is already the first step on the path the Japanese have been following for over 1,000 years. At the end of every class, Sensei Hiroshi would always say the same thing to Gordon. The mind you have now is not the mind you will have tomorrow, as long as you show up. Show up. If this video reached you, it probably wasn't by accident. Before you leave, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's quick, and it ensures you continue receiving content about Japanese philosophy, psychology, and what truly changes a life from the inside out. And tell me in the comments, which of the concepts that Sensei Hiroshi taught Gordon made the most sense to you? Mushin, Fudōshin, Jikō-seigyo, the space between stimulus and response. Which of these do you already feel you need to work on? Writing in the comments is a small act, but as Sensei Hiroshi would say, every real training begins with a small gesture, repeated consistently. Continue this journey of consistency by watching the content that is appearing on your screen, and keep delving deeper into these concepts that can change your perspective. Thank you so much for your attention and the time you dedicated to this content. This says a lot about who you are and what you are looking for. See you in the next video. And remember, be present, walk with honor, follow the path.